It's fair to say that soccer isn't the best of friends with the AFL. Soccer has been played in Australia since the 19th century, but it boomed significantly after a wave of migrants landed down under after World War II. But these new migrants quickly came into loggerheads with the local sports of rugby league, cricket, and most significantly, Australian rules football. The old guard of Aussie rules fans were not too keen on the foreign sport, as it started to make significant inroads right across the country. Take Bill Brew, for example, an Essendon delegate at the Australian Football Association's annual dinner in 1951. He said migrants coming to Australia should support the country's national game of Australian rules football. Quoting him, he said, "People who come to this country and accept all the advantages should support Australian rules football instead of furthering their own code." In South Australia, after a small newspaper named Soccer Mirror was established in 1953 to help hasten the onward march of soccer in South Australia, 3 Adelaide grounds were vandalised at Rowley Park, Kilburn and Bacala. At Rowley Park, a brown paper notice was found saying, "Down with the soccer, play Australian rules, you bastards," mixed in with broken glass. In 1953, Australian rules officials quietly prevented a Chinese soccer side from playing at the MCG. And in 1954, the Prime Council leased Toorak Park to a local Australian rules club for a peppercorn rent of £25. Yugoslav United Soccer Team, or JUST, who would go on to become a founding member of the National Soccer League in 1977, had offered the council £800 to use the ground, but was told to play elsewhere. In 1954, after Brighton Soccer Club secured a lease at Elston Wick Park on alternative Saturdays with the Brighton Aussie Rules Club, the Victorian Football Association Secretary Harold Snook said, quote, "There must be a united front of all Australian football clubs to halt the soccer movement." These examples are from 60 years ago. You can't imagine all this kind of petty behaviour is still going on today. Well, a pretty recent example is Melbourne Victory being booted out of Footscray Park, where it planned to build an academy. A ferocious grassroots campaign ultimately saw the local council tearing up the deal. And guess what's happening at Footscray Park right now? Yeah, it's being turned into an Aussie rules oval. Shock horror. So it seems strange that a sport in Australian rules football that has so strongly opposed the rise of soccer in this country would want to get involved with the sport altogether. So why would they? Well, to put it easily, a bit of money and of course our dear friend politics. In 1980, there was an attempted partnership between the Footscray VFL club and the NSL club Footscray Just. This marriage of convenience was so both clubs could share Western Oval, the home of the Bulldogs, as well as their resources. The Oval's owner, Footscray Council, were also happy with the arrangement, but the setup was canned after 2 games were played at Western Oval, after VFL suddenly declared that VFL grounds were to be used for VFL matches only. The AFL's first proper foray into the NSL came during the 1996-97 season. Heidelberg United, one of Melbourne's most famous soccer clubs, was excluded from the National Soccer League. Soccer Australia, led by David Hill, began the cleansing process, as they called it, of the league, trying to remove all remnants of ethnicity by forcing clubs to change their names. In a desperate bid to keep Heidelberg in the top flight, club officials partnered with the Collingwood Magpies, one of the AFL's biggest clubs. This new club would be called the Collingwood Warriors. And while the joint venture would keep Heidelberg in the top flight of Australian soccer, it provided Collingwood with another source of revenue. Pies general manager Rob Petrie said the AFL club had turned to soccer to maximise the use of its home ground at Victoria Park, after the Collingwood Cricket Club announced it would vacate the ground by the end of March 1996. Floods would also be installed to allow nighttime sport. At the time, Petrie waved down concerns that Collingwood was in breach of its AFL licence for partnering with Heidelberg United. Quoting him, he said, "The AFL is apparently worried about money leaving football and going into other sports, but we're talking about money coming into football. Australian rules will always be the best game. Other codes might make major advances, but they can never catch up." But the higher-ups at AFL HQ were indeed not happy. When AFL chief Ross Oakley heard of Collingwood's proposal, he told the Pies board that the club would be in breach of its AFL licence if they proceeded with the venture. On radio, Oakley is quoted with saying, At this point in time, we do not like the arrangement they have put to us, which is them controlling a soccer club, loaning their name to give a soccer club credibility in this state. But the AFL eventually backed down in its opposition, and the Collingwood Warriors were ready to kick off. They even tried to recruit Liverpool's legendary striker Ian Rush, but alas, no success. So on a warm Sunday afternoon in October 1996, in front of a crowd of over 10,000 people, the Collingwood Warriors thumped Melbourne Knights 3-0 at Victoria Park. It was a massive crowd for soccer at the time, especially for a team that had just founded. It seemed the new club in black, white and yellow would be a hit. But unfortunately, it wouldn't last. Over the next 2 home games, the attendances went into freefall, dropping by more than a whopping 75%. The Collingwood Warriors was described by Australian soccer historian Joe Gorman as a Frankenstein merge. They suffered from a lethal combination of poor planning, a lack of faith between the AFL people and the soccer people, and, most of all, terrible timing. Nicknamed Collingburg by Studs Up newspaper, the Warriors were disliked by nearly everyone. They didn't even finish the season at Victoria Park, moving to Olympic Park to play in front of barely 400 people. So the Collingwood Warriors lasted just 1 season, omitted from the NSL alongside Gippsland Falcons and the Canberra Cosmos. While the latter two had the option to come up with a revised membership application, the Warriors didn't even bother applying. Hey, at least they won a trophy, the NSL Cup, beating Marconi 1-0. So what do you do when the first soccer AFL partnership fails so spectacularly? Well, you try it again. The following season, in fact. The advent of the Collingwood Warriors was considered a false dawn by Melbourne journalists, with the newly created Carlton Soccer Club keen to become the, quote, Manchester United of Asia, by General Manager Lou Sticker. But once again, AFL was once again opposed to one of its club's ideas. They notified the Blues that it was in breach of its licence if it proceeded with the soccer club. Carlton president John Elliott, the man behind Elders Limited and a former state and federal president of the Liberal Party, relished the opportunity for a bit of a fight, proclaiming that to prevent Carlton's participation in the NSL would amount to restraint of trade. He was effectively daring the AFL to stop him. Negotiations ultimately led to the Blues agreeing to only having an informal connection with their soccer namesake. AFL 1, John Elliott 0. But AFL honchos were still worried about the threat of the round ball game. Then AFL communications manager Tony Peake was quoted saying, "We have concerns about all other football codes and their ability to eat into our market, be it among those attending our game, but particularly playing the game at a junior level. We want kids who barrack for the Carlton Football Club wanting to grow up with the dream of playing Australian football for the Carlton Football Club, not soccer." But on the field, the new Carlton club couldn't be any different to the Collingwood Warriors. Carlton could boast being Australia's first full-time professional soccer team, backed up by 10 or so full-time administrative and coaching staff. That level of professionalism was uncharted territory for soccer in Australia at the time. Brisbane Strikers coach Frank Farina said his team only had a third of the budget of Carlton after losing grand final captain Alan Hunter to the new Melbourne club. Carlton also appealed to a broad base of support rather than one section of the community, and frantically disassociated themselves from any ethnic links. But that financial support off the field was backed up on the field, as Carlton finished the 1997-98 regular season in second place, 3 points behind city rivals South Melbourne. With a squad featuring future Socceroos legend Mark Bresciano, Kiwi internationals Mark Atkinson and Sean Douglas, and journeymen John Markowski and Simon Colosimo, the Blues stormed into the grand final against South Melbourne at Olympic Park, in front of 16,000 fans. After falling behind in the 9th minute, Carlton equalised in the 78th minute via substitute Marcus Sturgopoulos. But the hearts of the new boys were crushed 3 minutes from time as Con Butsianis, as the man from South Melbourne scored the winner. That was the pinnacle for Carlton. A disappointing 11th place finish followed in 98-99, but there was a bit of a revival in 99-2000 when the Blues stormed back up the ladder to finish third. After accounting for Marconi in a two-legged elimination final, Carlton lost to eventual champions Wollongong Wolves 3-2 in the preliminary final. But like Collingwood, Carlton struggled to capture the imagination of the Melbourne public. The club was wholly dependent on Australian rules, a sport that had maintained a visceral hatred of soccer for decades. Playing out of the AFL ground at Princes Park, Carlton struggled to bring in crowds, and by 2000-2001 season, the club was cash-strapped and on death's door. Unable to find a potential investor to save them, Carlton withdrew from the NSL 8 rounds into the season. It was a sad demise for a club that had so much promise ahead of itself, making the grand final just over 2 years ago and having boasted the likes of Vince Grella, Archie Thompson, Josh Kennedy, Steve Horvath, and Daniel Alsop on their books. The AFL's short soccer experiment was over, never to be tried again. The NRL did also get in bed with the NSL as well, with the Parramatta Power, a team backed by the Parramatta Leagues Club, competing from the 1999 to 2000 season to the final one in 03-04. The Power actually played in the final NSL Grand Final, losing to Perth Glory and Golden Goal extra time. While well backed in the beginning, the club suffered from poor attendances throughout its existence, partially because of its links to the Eels, as well as it being in the already crowded Western Sydney football market. That concludes today's video. Thank you so much for watching or listening to it. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and I sure hope you did. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to hear about, and please do consider subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, sorry, I'm not using that other name, you can find us at the A-League Couch Critics. Or if you'd like to follow my personal account, you can find me at Bradley Jerd. Cheers.